Welcome to Dare, the show for innovators, entrepreneurs, and startup leaders who dare to shape the future. Your hosts today are Ned Hayes and Cecilia Mariani. Dare is brought to you by Darwaf, the superpower tech team that can make your vision a reality. Daniel Carroll is the founder and leader for the startup Amplimind, which launched Makewell this year. He's a dynamic leader in AI with a great history in the creation of new technology products, including some past products that use crypto, that were on the blockchain. He's also an Army veteran with a solid history of service to our country, and we're really happy to welcome our first guest from Georgia's emerging tech community to the show. So welcome to the podcast, Daniel.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, welcome to the show, Daniel. Can you tell us about your company, Amplimind?
Yeah, so Amplimind, the name of the company stems from Amplify Your Mind, which is the general idea that I had when forming the company. I've been overwhelmingly interested in automation and building systems ever since I was young. And I had a career in marketing that focused specifically on marketing automation. And for the longest time, I have been waiting for the point where I could stop building these really complicated if this, then this trees of quote unquote decision making and actually put a brain inside of some of these automated processes that I was building. When GPT-3 came out, I knew that we were less than one or two iterations away from that being a reality where I could put a brain inside these different systems of automation that I was building. And that was the spark that led to the creation of Amplimind, because I realized how many different ways that we could augment human productivity by empowering them with AI.
Yeah, and one of the key products you are talking about is Makewell. What is Makewell? Why does it matter?
Yeah, so Makewell is the very first product that we have released, and it is an AI-powered digital healthcare companion. I noticed that there was a big discrepancy between the types of services and the quality of services that were available, depending on what your income level is, or most importantly, your insurance status. And I noticed that there were a lot of different pain points and points of anxiety that surround the healthcare process that I thought could be eliminated by the creation of a smart healthcare companion.
So it sounds like Makewell is actually focused on saving lives. So can you tell us more about how you came up with this idea? What's your personal experience around healthcare?
Yeah, so Makewell is about saving lives, because I believe that if more people have the information that they need to make responsible decisions about the course of their healthcare, that lives will be saved. There will be people that choose to go to the hospital when they would have otherwise just dealt with the pain. There will be people that make the opposite decisions and know that they don't need to actually go to the emergency room right now because what they're experiencing is in fact something that's benign. It was born really out of necessity. I'd already started Amplimind, and myself and the one other coworker that I had at the time, we were both digital marketing experts, and we were focused on creating a course that taught digital marketers how to implement AI into their existing marketing practices. And then I got a call late at night that informed me that my father had been admitted to the ICU and that he'd had some kind of mental episode, and he was significantly cognitively declined. By the time I was able to get to the hospital, it had been determined that he'd had a stroke, and he had a stroke in his 60s. It was slow onset. In other words, it wasn't the dramatic head dropping to the table that we see in a lot of TV depictions of stroke. His friends around him had noticed the symptoms, but weren't aware that those were symptoms of stroke. They asked him questions like, "Mark, have you been drinking?" And my dad doesn't drink. So of course, no, he hadn't been drinking, but his friends noticed that he had significantly slurred speech, that something was affecting his speech. And he also noticed that he couldn't open up doors with his left hand because he would lose the grip, or he kept dropping things out of only his left hand. If there's any MDs that are listening, they can hear the clear signs that you need to get to the emergency room and have this checked out. But no one around him knew that there was something very serious going on. So he went to take a nap because he was tired and decided that the middle of his living room floor was where he needed to do that. And 2 days later, his girlfriend found him. And that's when he got admitted to the hospital. One of the first conversations that I had with the staff after I got through the initial what's going on, is he going to die questions, his neurologist informed me that because of his age and because of his lack of insurance, what my primary focus needed to be on right now was figuring out how we could afford an assisted living facility, because it was going to be unsafe to leave my father unsupervised for the rest of his life. That was something that I knew my dad, being a cowboy, wouldn't accept. He is going to live in his own place until the day he dies. And I knew that it was likely going to be on me to try to make sure that that date didn't happen very quickly, because being uninsured, the hospital was in a hurry to kick him out as soon as he was actually stabilized. So I'd already been doing a lot of experimentation and building with AI. I'd already become a master of prompt engineering, and I happened to have the luck of being married to a clinician. My wife is a healthcare provider for the U.S. Army, so none of her patients have ever had a stroke before, but she remembered enough about stroke from the med school days to tell me what I needed to know so that I could have GPT train me as a stroke recovery expert and start having a meaningful impact on my father's life. Over the next few months, I helped make that meaningful impact. My father is walking around, not fine, but he's walking around when it was never expected that he would have that kind of mobility anymore. He's got grip in his hand. His cognitive processes have almost completely recovered from the point where when he was in the hospital, he couldn't track from the beginning to the end of a single sentence, much less reply. And now he's able to hold the punchline to a joke that he wants to deliver in the back of his head for several iterations of conversation so that he can do the setup and have
Right.
and deliver the punchline. So
Yeah. It sounds like this experience was really transformative for your understanding of how necessary this information is, right?
Yeah. And how, if I didn't have this luck of being married to a healthcare provider and this skill of being able to get AI to do whatever I want it to do, that I would have been in the dark at the whims of the healthcare system. So as soon as he was stable enough to be on his own, have no more care than having a girlfriend that lives with him and helps out with tasks around the house from time to time, as soon as he was stable enough, I made it my mission to get this out into a product that everyone could use. So when they encounter their own serious healthcare issue, they can go into the doctor's office with the complete understanding of what their situation is. And they can also understand the information that is being given to them by their provider to help with compliance and to increase the likelihood of recovery.
Yeah, so your mission with Makewell is to equalize access to healthcare information for all, right?
Right.
So how do you get Makewell out there so people can use it?
Yeah. So Makewell obviously does the equalizing of the healthcare information for anyone that uses it by interacting with people at their own levels of healthcare literacy in their native language to deliver the right information that they need without having to go down these rabbit holes of Googling it, WebMD, PubMed, and then being convinced that you're dying of cancer. The way that I'm ensuring that everyone can get a hold of it is I'm not going through the traditional healthcare system and selling an extremely overpriced tool to clinicians that they can then prescribe to their patients. That's the typical route that I see this kind of software being deployed. And that would not serve the most important customer to me. The most important customers to me are those that don't have health insurance, that can't afford to take the time off from work to follow up on what they might consider low priority things. There's a significant portion, like more than half of the homeless population in our country has a smartphone with internet access. And I want those people to be able to have access to Makewell. And I'm doing that by one, releasing it direct to consumer at a very low price of $8.99 a month. And for all of those people that fall within the below the poverty line or would have trouble paying for a subscription like that, I am partnering with local municipalities that are forward thinking, that are willing to sponsor discounted memberships to the indigent and the underserved populations within them.
Mhm. That seems really valuable and almost like a public service, right?
Yeah, I think that healthcare in a country that is as wealthy as ours should be a right. I have no idea what the right execution of that is because I see things like single payer systems being experimented with in some places. I see different types of care structures like service-based care and values-based care. And those problems are bigger than what I'm trying to solve and definitely need specialist attention. But doing my part of making sure that people have the right information at the right time, I think is key in providing that kind of healthcare service. And I really do think that we should start thinking about healthcare as a fundamental right in the same way that a lot of states are treating certain utilities. Like it's a right to have power or it's a right to have internet access in some places. I think that we should all have the right to be healthy and the right to have all of the information that surrounds that quest of being healthy.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, it's great to be talking to you because you're doing a product that is actually for societal good. And I know that you and I have talked a little bit offline, and you've mentioned you're on the autistic spectrum. So I'm curious if you could speak to your experience a little bit about how you interact with the healthcare system as an autistic person, and maybe how the system could be made better for people on the spectrum. Maybe that's a lot of questions all at once.
Well, I think maybe some of it I'm not super qualified to speak about because there's such a variety of autistic people with a variety of challenges. The way that I think that autism affects my experience in the healthcare system is something that kind of runs rampant in the rest of my life. I have an extraordinarily low tolerance for BS. And there is quite a bit of BS that I experience in the healthcare system, such as I come to the doctor that has just prescribed me this new medication. I'm experiencing this side effect. That's the number one listed side effect on that medication. I said, hey, doc, I've got this side effect. I didn't have it before. It's related to this medication. Can I get another medication to solve that? Or can we talk about switching to a different medication? And the default response is to send me to go have labs done and to be evaluated by this other person and to go rule out all of these other things, where if we both just used common sense in the situation, we would know, here's our answer, let's do it. But because there's all of these priorities that are put on by hospital administration, insurance companies, there's this route that seems to be delivered to try to break service up into as many different chunks as possible. I have literally been asked to schedule a follow-up appointment during dental cleaning. They did one row of teeth and said, oh, okay, well, we're running out of time, so we need to schedule you to come in again. And I'm like, well, number one, we're really not running out of time according to my watch in what our appointment is. And why schedule another appointment instead of just going ahead and finishing what's going on? And when you get down and you push these people, it's because my insurance company underpays them and they want to get paid for two different things.
Yeah, the financial motives in especially the US healthcare system are really back asswards compared to where they should be. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a more polite way of saying that, but the priorities are really scrambled.
Right. So how I think that my app will help people that have a low tolerance, because I admit that I have foregone treatment and foregone service simply because I know that something in the meeting is going to make me angry. and that my overall feeling about the situation will have been less than if I just neglected this.
Mhm.
So how I think Makewell will eventually be able to help people in that position is by better arming them for what to expect, allowing them to advocate for themselves when they get into that situation by saying, well, I understand that this is what you recommend, but what about these other logical recommendations that my app has already generated that will help us get to the core of our issue faster without having to do all of these unnecessary pokes and prods and blood draws? And if I'm wrong about that, please explain what the logic behind going to do those things are. So I think that better informing and preparing people and allowing them to advocate for themselves when they do have a healthcare provider that is trying to schedule a bunch of extra stuff is going to be useful.
Well, we are glad you are addressing these big issues. So let's go back to AI. How does AI make a difference in the kind of products we can carry around?
So AI, a lot of people think of AI as like one more tool. They think
Mhm.
about opening Chat GPT the same way that they think about opening Microsoft Word or their email client. And that's the way it's manifesting right now, is that we've got these different AI tools that we're opening. But I don't think that that's going to be the case for long. It's not going to be that AI is an extra thing that's tacked onto it. We will realize that artificial intelligence should be the core, or at least be a core element of the operating system, so that less user input is required. In the same way that Elon Musk talks about any element of user intervention in his car is a mistake that the system has made. You shouldn't have to decide whether you're going into reverse or into drive, because the car should just be in the correct one when you get in. I think that we will have elements of AI integrated across the board in our normal systems. And hopefully it's implemented smart and for the right reasons. And if it is, it's just going to lower the friction of
Mhm.
everything across the board. It's going to be much less difficult to accomplish your tasks because you will have to do less of the labor, and the app will have to do less of the labor because there is a truly cognitively brilliant middleman that's helping out with the task.
Right. So I know we've seen some special hardware form factors come out, like the Humane Pin or the Rabbit R1, which have kind of an embedded AI as a core feature. But what you're saying is AI will be everywhere, kind of pervasive, and not necessarily unique to one form factor or system. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it will be everywhere. And it will also not be just one thing. A lot of people also think that we'll eventually reach this milestone of AGI, artificial general intelligence, and they think about that as a singular thing. Some science fiction even calls it the singularity. And I don't think that it's going to be this one system that is released by OpenAI next year or in the long run. I think it's going to be the smart combination of a bunch of various systems that are all good at their own tasks and all efficient at their own tasks. And they will be beautifully orchestrated together for the various purposes that we need. As it relates to like the Humane Pin and Rabbit, I think that those are about the closest demonstration to what I'm talking about today. I think the products are a bit new, and it's nothing saying negatively about either one of those products, but I doubt that either one of them gets very much traction simply because people aren't ready to let go of their screens yet, and people aren't ready to just fully give up. And we still do need some visual feedback that those systems aren't providing. So once we've got the augmented reality glasses that are standard for everybody, not just the super nerds, and
Yeah.
once we've essentially got a way to get that visual and auditory data into our brains through external tech or through Neuralink, it will just be another integrated way to do things. Things will just have less friction because the machine that sits between you and your final goal will be smarter about responding to your queries.
Mhm.
And just to back up a bit, what led you into the AI field to start with? What got you started in AI?
Yeah, that probably has something to do with my autism. Autistic people frequently have special interests, things that we become curious about, and then we like obsess over. Everything that I do is usually related to a special interest because I hardly have any extra time after I take up for my special interests. One of the very earliest ones that I had was in automation. My grandfather had a chicken farm, and I was blown away by these manual conveyor belt systems that he had built that were able to gather the eggs and arrange them in a manner that prevented him from having to use migrant labor, which is what was growing in popularity in the chicken farm industry, at least at the time. And I was really fascinated by what he built. And ever since then, I'd built Rube Goldberg machines to accomplish tasks in a much more complicated manner. And then I'd done the opposite, where I need to accomplish a couple of sets of tasks and I figure out how to automate them together. So I've always had this fascination with automation. And when I was in middle school, I remember reading about the thinking machine and how AI would one day enable computers to think, and having a conversation with my teacher that I was like, oh, wouldn't that be awesome if that could be a reality? And he informed me, well, for a lot longer than you've been alive, people have been working on this issue. And I think that one day it will come alive. So ever since that moment, every single time that a new organization has announced our bonsai buddy or our this implementation of AI is here and it's here to change the world, I pause and take a look and do some experimentation and see, are we getting closer or is this another gimmick? And until I evaluated GPT-3, it was just a gimmick. The AI that was possible was only possible by these extraordinarily wealthy companies that could afford the teams of people to be able to train the machine to do this extremely specific subtask of their business model. And not only can nobody else accomplish it, but even if somebody else did accomplish it, what good is it if your local video store has this extraordinarily expensive to operate recommendation engine like Netflix does? It makes sense at the scale that Netflix has AI to recommend stuff, but your local mom and pop shop, they go out of business trying to run that solution. When GPT-3 came out, I could tell that we were very, very close to being able to get that thinking machine inside any of these systems of automation that I had built in the past, or that I had dreamed of, but needed something better than a decision tree of if this, then this, to be able to drive the logic behind it. So that's really what got me into AI, was the desire to put cognition inside code.
Got it. Well, so where are you going next with your Makewell product or with Amplimind? Any new ideas or new products you're launching based on your knowledge in this area?
Yeah, so Makewell has just officially hit the app stores this week and is available for download. And I am excited to continue to improve that product until I am sure that we have accomplished all of the aspects that I laid out in our goals. The version that exists in the App Store today is still missing a few of the features that I want to have for it to serve the widest audience. So I suspect that for at least the next 6 months, that's what I'll be primarily focused on, is making sure that Makewell achieves its full realization. But other than that, I am continuing down the path of trying to help people augment their lives with AI. Makewell is just the first iteration of this. There is going to be a clinician-facing version of Makewell that is designed to help with the decision-making processes in clinics, from triage to diagnosis. That is going to be a very large effort and a lot more regulatory hurdles to go through. But I've also got a lot of small projects that I'm excited to grow to help people with preparing legal documents and reviewing legal documents. If you are not in a position to be able to have general practice on counsel, to be able to help. Another idea that I have in the works is helping soldiers with their administrative tasks. A lot of soldiers are asked to write awards and to do performance evaluations on their peers, but a lot of soldiers don't have very extensive training on the type of writing and communication that is required in order to accomplish that task effectively. I remember that because it was one of my skills that I had. And a lot of my peers would ask me on the weekends, hey, can you help me out with this award citation? Hey, can you help me out with this counseling statement that I'm doing for my soldiers to try to help inform them of where their shortcomings are and inform them of how they can achieve the help and support that they need to accomplish our mission. And I'm fairly confident that I can make a tool that assists those people in those smaller subsets of tasks. So there's going to be some big efforts and there's going to be some smaller efforts, but all of them seem like they're going to manifest themselves in the form of either an app that an individual will use for a specific purpose, or it will be an API that serves another type of organization to help them get better data or to help their application make better decisions.
Oh, that's very exciting. So, in terms of scaling and growing, what kind of teamwork will it take to grow your company to the next level?
What kind of teamwork will it take to grow my company to the next level? That is still a question that I am learning myself. A lot of the projects that I've been involved in the past were very small teams, usually majority tech teams, especially in the blockchain space. That's par for the course. The developer that came up with the idea is also the CEO of the organization, and he's the marketing guy for the organization. And that works well in the blockchain space. But I realized fairly early on in my efforts with Makewell that my lack of specific medical industry knowledge was going to make several of the elements difficult. So one of the things that I have learned to do throughout this project is let go and stop trying to do absolutely everything myself. Stop trying to be a perfectionist and find somebody that is an expert in each one of the realms that I want assistance with, so that I can hire that industry expert, pass the task off to them, and never have to worry about whether or not it's getting done right. All I have to do is to check in meetings to make sure that we have the resources that we need and that everybody's taking the steps. So that's where I'm at kind of with my learning and scaling right now. Is I've brought on a couple of additional team members that have executive experience, both at Microsoft and Amazon, to help me with strategy and business operations. I'm forming a medical advisory board so that it's more than just my wife and her peers that are advising me on the medical processes and how we can best serve the community. And yeah, that's essentially, I think, the answer to your question is I'm getting players to help me with execution so that I'm not just trying to do everything myself.
Right. I mean, that's a critical stage for any company to understand that it can't just, all the weight can't just land on one pair of shoulders. Being able to expand and being able to use either outsource dev teams or being able to use advisory groups or even hiring additional people. Big stage of growth for you.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that a lot of people, at least myself, underestimated about that is when you see outsourcing, a lot of times as a founder, what you see is a bill. And if you're a bootstrapped startup, you see, here's money that I need to pay to somebody else to do something. Well, why don't I just do that? Like, for example, I can do front end design. I know how to do the basic elements of UI. I understand the principles and I know how to do the coding. But when I was building Makewell, I knew that I wanted to have my brain solely focused on recreating the cognitive processes that doctors use to diagnose and treat patients, and that I didn't want that task of making this beautiful, intuitive AI to be high up on my list. there are creative ways that you can get this help before you have the big budget. I created an equity incentive plan with my partner that does the front end work. I have some members that are helping out with business operations, and their only compensation is a percentage of revenue share. There are definitely ways that you can make these agreements and get the support of external parties, especially when you've got a great idea and you've got an MVP concept that you can demonstrate. It's easier than I thought to attract really top tier talent to the project. And a lot of times it's worth, even if you can't get them to sign on for equity or you can't make an alternative deal, it's a lot of times worth just taking a little bit of debt to pay someone else to do it. Because otherwise, if you're doing it yourself, it's going to very likely take you 4, 5, 10 times as long to accomplish the same task. And while you accomplished it for free, what's the value that you threw away by having to distract yourself from your zone of genius to deal with front end design or to deal with marketing execution? If that's not what you're best at, get somebody who is best at that to deal with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we work with a lot of startups, and I can't tell you how many people take things on and they're like, oh, I can learn this. And yet the cost of learning a whole new skill set, when to your point, if you already have a zone of genius in engineering or in product design or in, back-end development, use that superpower and hire other people who can, amplify your skills. So totally agree. So just to switch questions for a minute, you're actually based in Georgia, right, Daniel?
I am. I'm in Savannah, Georgia right now.
Yeah. So we often talk to companies on this podcast who are based in the Pacific Northwest, but we've been expanding operations in Georgia, in Atlanta, in that region. And I'm curious if you could tell us what's great about the Peach State. What makes tech unique there?
Yeah, I think that a huge amount of the business influx that Georgia has seen over the last decade or two has to do with the same reason that Austin has seen an influx, and that's states that respect business owners and aren't overly burdensome with regulation. I know that Atlanta has a special tax benefit that I see in the credits of half the movies and TV shows today. And I know that there are some additional commerce benefits that have caused our port in Savannah to go from a tiny little port when I was a kid to now it's the largest port on the eastern United States and will soon be the largest port in the United States. I think that what has happened with the tech industry growth, specifically around Atlanta, is there's such a concentration of people that have the skills, that have the interests, but can't afford to move out to Silicon Valley or to Manhattan to get close to where a lot of these big tech organizations are. And there's nothing particularly unique about the 50 million people that live near Meta's headquarters. If there's 50 million people that live within driving distance of your business, I guarantee you there's a few Albert Einsteins on your topic that are living there. And in places like San Francisco, I think that they have just tapped out the local population and really trained the local population that you have to ask for a salary that's double of what's expected anywhere else in the United States, because your 600 square foot apartment is going to cost more than my 3,000 square foot home in Georgia is going to cost. So I think just cost of living and favorable state regulations is really what has led to the explosive growth that I've seen over the last couple of decades in Georgia.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see. I mean, there's a good reason why we're expanding there, why a lot of tech companies are really putting down roots there. So, yeah.
Well, finally, our podcast is about people who dare to dream. So what do you dare to dream, Daniel? What new world do you imagine you are creating?
So I think that AI is very likely the last technological revolution that human beings will be primarily responsible for.
Mm.
I think the next technological revolution, whatever that might be, we will be assistants in that technological revolution. I saw a poll on LinkedIn recently that said, that asked the audience, to what degree do you think AI can do your job? And I always find those comical because most of the time it's the white collar people that are most sure that AI can't do their job. And those are the jobs that you can almost completely replace with AI right now, as long as you've got a smart enough engineer and a smart enough prompt engineer to replicate the tasks and steps that need to be done cognitively to fulfill that job. And right now it's the truck drivers and the ditch diggers and the manual laborers whose jobs are safe from AI. But I don't think that's going to be for very long based on the advancements that I see in robotics. So I think over the next 20 years, what we're going to see is this huge unemployment spike that's going to be higher than anything we've seen since the Great Depression, and will very likely exceed what we saw in the Great Depression. But it won't necessarily be a negative thing because productivity is still going to be getting done. And work is still going to be getting done. And instead of just letting the whole system collapse, I'm confident that government is going to step in and create like a robot tax or something like that. That's going to say, all right, if this company is pulling in $10 trillion a year in revenue, but they're able to do that instead of with a 30,000 member workforce, they're able to do that with a 30-person workforce. How are we going to keep the wealth from concentrating unfairly into these fields, especially since it's these companies that have put so many people out of a job? I think the government's going to get that settled at some point. It's likely to be chaotic until then, but that's the day that I dream about, is post-labor economics, when we don't have to wake up and grind at something that we may or may not be excited about in order to be able to afford to live. I'm excited for when people have the true freedom to either waste all of their time if they want to just play video games, or if they just want to insert other waste of time thing here, or if they want to go on and pursue education and all of these different fields. Because I don't think that people will lose meaning in those things. Like, it has been impossible for humans to beat machines at chess for quite a long time. People just don't play against the robot chess masters. But you can still find people in public parks doing these tournaments against each other and getting quite a bit of fulfillment in that competition. So I think that people are going to be left with the ability to choose how they want to spend their time. And I'm excited for all of the things people get to choose to spend their time on when it's not the rat race.
That's an exciting dream. Well, I really appreciate your perspective on AI, on post-labor economy, and all the ways that Makewell will expose healthcare information to people. So thank you for sharing all that with us, Daniel.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Thanks to our guests today for their great insights on DARE, the podcast for innovators, entrepreneurs, and startup leaders. If you'd like your story to be featured on DARE, just contact us at info@darwaft.com. DARE is brought to you by Darwaft, the tech team that can make your vision a reality.